The galaxy had always been a place of cold, calculating alliances and distant wars. Civilizations rose and fell, and the stars above remained indifferent to their struggles. However, one event shook this delicate balance, an event that sent ripples across the entire galactic community. The Thraxi were a proud and ancient species, known for their towering cities and advanced technology. For centuries, they had ruled over their corner of the galaxy, looking down upon lesser civilizations. They had no time for those they considered weak, for they were the mightiest of all. But everything changed when a cosmic storm of unprecedented power tore through their home system. Planets were damaged, resources were drained, and entire cities were obliterated. The Thraxi, once unchallenged, were now on the brink of extinction. The galaxy's empires, ruthless in their pursuit of power, watched from the sidelines. They had no love for the Thraxi. The Thraxi had always been distant, even hostile toward other species, believing themselves superior. For countless years, they had turned away any offers of peace or assistance from the lesser species, choosing instead to focus on their own conquests. Now, the Thraxi were asking for help, and the other galactic powers were unmoved. They saw this as an opportunity to let the Thraxi suffer, to weaken one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. No one was willing to risk resources for a species that had shown nothing but disdain for others. It was in this climate of indifference that a single message was sent out across the stars, a message that would stir humanity to action. On Earth, the United Nations had just finished another meeting of diplomats and scientists, their faces tense after an hour of debate. The proposal to assist the Thraxi had come up during the session, and the reactions had been swift. Some spoke of the danger of getting involved with such a volatile species. Others pointed out that the Thraxi had never been allies, only conquerors and aggressors. "What do we owe them?" one of the council members had asked, his voice cold. "We have no reason to help them. They are the architects of their own downfall." But then, Commander Elena Monroe stood, a former military strategist and now a leading voice in the United Earth Space Fleet. Elena was known for her pragmatism and her ability to think beyond the politics of the moment. She had seen enough of the galaxy's cruelty to know that sometimes the right thing to do was not always the easiest. "We are not like them," Elena said, her voice steady. "The Thraxi may have turned away help in the past, but they are still sentient beings. We cannot stand by and let them perish simply because they were once arrogant. We are a young species, and we have something they don't: hope. We have the ability to change the future, to set a different example." There was silence in the room. Some nodded in agreement, while others simply looked skeptical. Dr. Ravi Kaur, a renowned scientist and biologist, was the next to speak. "We have the technology to save them. It may be risky, but humanity is not about turning our backs when others are in need. If we let the Thraxi fall, what does that say about us as a species?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Despite the doubts and fears, a growing consensus formed. Humanity, despite its flaws and imperfections, had something the other civilizations lacked: a belief in doing what was right, even when it was difficult. The decision was made. That night, the United Earth Space Fleet launched Project Lifeline, a coordinated mission to the Thraxi system. The mission would take weeks, and Earth's resources were already stretched thin, but it was not just a matter of saving the Thraxi. The galaxy was watching. If humanity stepped up, it could change the perception of Earth in the eyes of the other species. It would show that humanity was willing to take a stand, to make sacrifices for those who were in need. Commander Monroe's ship, the Hope, was at the forefront of the mission. It was a state-of-the-art vessel, designed for exploration, but modified for this mission. Equipped with the latest technology, the Hope carried supplies and scientific teams, including Dr. Kaur, who would help find a solution to the Thraxi's ecological and technological crisis. But beyond that, they would also serve as a symbol, an example of what humanity stood for. The journey was not an easy one. The Thraxi system was far from Earth, nestled in the outer reaches of the galaxy, and the route to it was dangerous, filled with cosmic anomalies and unknown risks. The storm that had devastated the Thraxi was still raging, its effects rippling through the system, making it nearly impossible to approach. The Hope would have to use every ounce of human ingenuity and resourcefulness to navigate through the chaos. As they approached the Thraxi system, Commander Monroe stood on the bridge, staring at the dark expanse before them. The stars in the distance seemed distant and cold, and the glowing remnants of the storm flickered in the distance. She knew the challenges ahead would be immense, but she also knew that humanity had something the galaxy could not ignore: heart. And it was time to show the galaxy exactly what that heart was capable of. As the Hope sailed closer to the Thraxi system, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for what lay ahead. Commander Elena Monroe, standing at the front of the bridge, felt the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. The mission was a gamble. Earth had little to gain and everything to lose, but she had made her decision, and there was no turning back. Approaching the edge of the Thraxi system, said Lieutenant Ava Kaladin, her voice steady. She was monitoring the ship's sensors, trying to get a clearer view of the cosmic storm that raged ahead. The storm was unlike anything they had ever encountered: swirling radiation, massive space debris, and intense magnetic fields that would tear apart anything that wasn't prepared. "Keep your eyes on the storm. We can't afford any miscalculations now," Elena said, her voice calm but firm. She turned to her second-in-command, Commander Lucas Chen, who stood beside her, studying the readouts on the control panel. Lucas was one of the few people who had ever doubted the mission, but he respected Elena's leadership. He wasn't sure humanity was ready for such a dangerous mission, but if Elena believed they could do it, he would follow her. "We've got this," Lucas said quietly, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. Elena nodded, reassuring him with a small but confident smile. The rest of the crew was also feeling the pressure. Dr. Ravi Kaur, who had been working non-stop in the ship's research lab, walked onto the bridge, carrying a tablet filled with data. She had been studying the Thraxi's technology for hours, hoping to find any useful information that might help them in the coming days. "I think I've found something," Dr. Kaur said, her voice tinged with excitement. She handed the tablet to Elena. "It's a possible weakness in the Thraxi's energy grid. If we can get close enough, we might be able to redirect energy to stabilize their environment." Elena studied the screen carefully. The Thraxi had always been known for their advanced technology, but it was clear from the data that their systems had been severely damaged by the storm. If they could help fix the energy grid, it might buy the Thraxi enough time to rebuild. Elena looked up from the screen, meeting Dr. Kaur's eyes. "This is our best shot," Elena said. "Prepare a team. We're going to need everything we got to get through this storm and into the heart of their system." As the Hope approached the storm, the crew braced for the worst. The intensity of the cosmic disturbance increased, and the ship began to shake under the pressure. The hum of the engines grew louder, the powerful engines straining against the fierce forces of the storm. "Hold steady," Elena ordered. She could feel the ship's hull vibrating beneath her feet. "We're almost there." Outside the ship, the storm was a swirling mass of energy and debris. Lightning-like strikes of radiation flashed across the sky, lighting up the darkness like an angry fire. Giant chunks of debris from destroyed planets and space stations floated in the chaos. It was as if the very fabric of space was unraveling. For a moment, the crew felt as though the storm might swallow them whole. The ship's shields flickered, threatening to give way under the strain. But Elena's command kept them steady. She had trained for moments like this, and now she would rely on every bit of that experience. "We're through the worst of it," Lucas called out from his station. "But it's still too dangerous to get too close. The Thraxi's central system is just ahead." "Let's move in," Elena ordered, determination in her eyes. "Prepare the shuttle. Dr. Kaur, you're with me." With the shuttle ready, Elena, Dr. Kaur, and a small crew of engineers suited up, the shuttle launched from the Hope and rocketed toward the Thraxi homeworld. The storm's effects were still strong, but the shuttle was specially equipped to withstand the radiation and gravitational fluctuations. As they neared the Thraxi's planet, the team could see the damage. The once majestic world was now a shadow of its former self, with crumbled cities and scorched landscapes stretching out in all directions. Alina's heart sank as she looked out the window. The Thraxi had always been proud, but now they were desperate, and the reality of their situation was clearer than ever. Approaching the energy core, Dr. Core said, studying her tablet. I think we can stabilize it, but we'll need to connect directly to their main power grid. The shuttle landed near what remained of the Thraxi capital city. The once impressive buildings were now reduced to rubble, and the air was thick with dust and debris. Thraxi soldiers, though clearly weakened by the storm, were stationed around the wreckage, glaring at the humans with suspicion. As Alina and Dr. Core approached the soldiers, the Thraxi commander stepped forward. His gaze was cold, but there was a flicker of something else, perhaps a sense of doubt. The humans had arrived, not as conquerors, but as saviors. We'll do what we can, Alina said firmly. But we need your cooperation. You're running out of time. The Thraxi commander didn't speak at first, but after a tense moment he nodded. You will do what you can. But I warn you, human, failure will not be tolerated. Alina met his gaze. We're here to help. Let's make it count. With that, the team moved forward, determined to do what no other civilization had been willing to do. To save the Thraxi, no matter the cost. The situation was dire, and every second counted. As Commander Alina Monroe and Dr. Ravi Kaur stood in the shadow of the shattered Thraxi capital, the storm raged around them. The air was thick with dust, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The once vibrant city was now a ghost of its former self, destroyed, scared, and abandoned. Yet, there was still a faint hope, a glimmer that humanity's intervention might turn the tide. We need to hurry, Alina said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stabilize their energy grid. Dr. Core nodded, her expression focused. I've analyzed the Thraxi energy core. The storm has knocked it off balance. If we can connect our systems to theirs and inject a stabilizing charge, it might be enough to hold things together long enough for them to rebuild. But the path ahead was anything but simple. The Thraxi soldiers, though they were willing to cooperate, were not exactly eager to trust the humans. As Alina and Dr. Core approached the damaged energy core facility, the Thraxi commander, a tall, broad-shouldered figure named Vorak, followed closely behind. His gaze was hard, but there was something different in his eyes now, a reluctant respect, perhaps even a trace of hope. I never thought I'd see the day when we needed help from them, Vorak said, his voice low. You must understand, humans, that we have never relied on others. We understand, Alina replied, her tone calm but firm. But now is not the time for pride. We need to work together to save this world. Vorak said nothing more, but he gave a nod and gestured for them to follow him. The facility was just ahead, its dark silhouette rising against the storm-filled sky. It had once been a place of great technological achievement for the Thraxi, a hub that powered their entire civilization. Now, it was a broken ruin. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of burned circuits in disrepair. The central power grid was unstable, flickering on and off like a dying star. Wires hung loose from the ceiling, and broken panels sparkled with erratic energy. Alina could feel the tension in the air as the gravity of the task ahead weighed on everyone's shoulders. We'll need to manually interface with their system, Dr. Core explained, her voice filled with determination. It's going to take time, and we'll need your help, Vorak. The Thraxi commander grunted in acknowledgement, but his eyes lingered on the humans. He had no choice but to put his faith in them now. The destruction of his people's homeworld was a blow to his pride, and he knew that if they didn't succeed, it would be the end of the Thraxi. Alina and Dr. Core moved to the central console, their hands flying over the controls as they worked to establish a connection. The energy core was unstable, fluctuating wildly as the storm outside continued to tear at the planet. Alina's mind raced with the calculations, her military training kicking in. She had done this before, navigating the chaos, thinking on her feet, and keeping calm under pressure. "We need more power to the relays," Dr. Kaur said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The systems are being overloaded. We'll need to redirect energy from the lower sectors to boost the core." Vorak nodded, signaling to his soldiers to follow his orders. "Do it, whatever it takes." As the Thraxi soldiers worked to reroute power, Alina and Dr. Kaur continued their delicate task. Sweat beaded on Alina's forehead as she adjusted the settings on the console, her fingers moving with precision. The entire structure was shaking, the storm outside pushing the planet's atmosphere to the breaking point. "Commander," Lucas's voice crackled through the comms. "We've detected something. The storm is intensifying. We don't know how much longer the Hope can hold out there. If we don't stabilize the grid soon, the storm will swallow the planet." Alina didn't respond immediately. She knew that the mission was becoming more dangerous by the minute. They were racing against time, and there was no margin for error. "Dr. Kaur," Alina said, her voice steady but urgent, "we need to make this work. Now." "I'm almost there," Dr. Kaur replied, her hands flying over the controls. "I just need to." She paused. "Got it. Redirecting the power now." For a moment, there was silence. Then a hum, a low, powerful hum, began to fill the room. The energy grid flickered back to life, slowly at first, then with increasing strength. The lights in the facility brightened, and the central console showed signs of stabilization. "It's working," Dr. Kaur said, a small smile of relief crossing her face. But the storm outside was not finished. The energy surge had calmed the core, but the planet's atmosphere remained unstable. Alina could feel the tension building again. They weren't out of danger yet. "We've stabilized the core," Alina said, turning to Vorak. "But this is only a temporary fix. You'll need to reinforce the grid and begin repairs immediately." Vorak's gaze softened, a rare moment of gratitude shining through his usually stoic expression. "You've done what no one else would. The Thraxi owe you more than words can say." Alina simply nodded. "It's not about owing us. It's about survival." The storm outside still howled, and the future of the Thraxi was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Humanity had stepped forward when every other civilization had turned away. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. And as long as there was hope, there was a chance for a better future. "Let's get to work," Alina said, her voice resolute. "The storm isn't over yet." The Thraxi system was still reeling from the chaos that had nearly destroyed it. The storm raged with a fury that could not be tamed, its violent pulses shaking the very core of the planet. Yet, in the heart of the storm, humanity had made its stand. Commander Alina Monroe and Dr. Ravi Kaur had given the Thraxi a chance to survive, but the battle was far from over. The energy grid was stable for now, but it would take much more to truly heal a world so battered by time and nature. Alina stood in the heart of the Thraxi energy facility, watching the readings on the central console. The storm still lingered, unpredictable and powerful. They had managed to stabilize the core, but the planet's atmosphere continued to swirl in dangerous, erratic patterns. The energy network was patched up, but its true repair would require time. Time they didn't have. "We've done all we can here," Alina said, glancing at Dr. Kaur. "But this won't hold forever. We need a permanent solution." Dr. Kaur studied the data on her tablet, her brow furrowing. "The storm's intensity is much higher than we originally thought. It's pulling energy from every corner of the planet, disrupting any efforts to stabilize the grid. Even if we manage to reinforce the core, the storm will eventually overwhelm it again." Alina's mind raced. She had never faced a problem this complicated, but she had no intention of backing down. Humanity had already done what no one else would. They couldn't just leave now. The Thraxi were not allies. I'll come with you, Vorik said, his voice low but filled with resolve. My people have created this mess. I won't stand by while you fight to fix it. Alina glanced at him, weighing his words. She knew the Thraxi were proud, but this was something different. Vorik wasn't just offering his help, he was taking responsibility. And in that moment, Alina felt the smallest spark of hope, that perhaps this mission could lead to something greater than mere survival. All right, she said, giving him a small nod. We'll need your knowledge of the core systems. Dr. Core, you're with me. Lucas, get the Hope ready for extraction. We're going into the storm. The team gathered their equipment and boarded the shuttle. The storm outside had only grown more intense, but they couldn't delay. The heart of the storm was waiting for them, and it was their only hope for a solution. As the shuttle flew into the swirling chaos, Alina could see the storm's violent energy from within. The sky was alive with flashes of light and waves of distortion. It was as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. The shuttle rocked as it passed through the outer bands of the storm, but Alina's team held steady. We're almost there. Lucas's voice came over the comms. The shuttle is holding, but we're running low on fuel. We need to make this quick. We will, Alina said, her tone calm, but full of determination. The revelation hit Alina like a punch to the gut. The Thraxi, a species she had come to respect for their technological prowess, had created a weapon that was now threatening their very existence. And now, that weapon was threatening all life on the planet. This is why the others turned away, Dr. Core said, her voice filled with disbelief. The Thraxi were hiding their history. They didn't want anyone to know the true cost of their power. Alina's mind raced. We have to shut it down. We need to find a way to neutralize the weapon before it destroys the entire system. Vorik led them deeper into the core, his expression grim. You won't be able to just turn it off. The weapon's energy is integrated into the planet's entire system. If we try to shut it down abruptly, it could cause a chain reaction. The entire planet would collapse. Dr. Core looked at Vorik, then turned to Alina. We need to find a way to redirect the energy, not destroy it. If we can contain the power and siphon it off, we can stop the storm. Alina's heart raced. She understood the stakes now. The Thraxi had created a disaster in their own pursuit of power, and humanity's intervention was the only chance they had left. But it wouldn't be easy. The storm's power was unlike anything they had ever encountered. And the Thraxi's technology, though advanced, was unstable, built on centuries of secrecy and pride. They reached the heart of the core, a massive chamber filled with glowing energy conduits and twisting beams of light. The atmosphere was thick with power, and the walls seemed to pulse with an almost unnatural rhythm. In the center of the room stood a massive energy core, its surface covered in cracks and fissures, leaking dangerous bursts of energy. This is it, Vorik said, stepping forward. A heart of the storm. Alina surveyed the area. We need to stabilize the core. Dr. Core, can you interface with it? Dr. Core nodded, already pulling out her tablet and connecting it to the system. The interface sparked to life, showing a complex web of energy flows, each one feeding into the core. It was a tangled mess of systems, all linked to the storm's power. I can access it, Dr. Core said, but we need to find a way to break the cycle. The core's energy is feeding into the storm, amplifying it. If we can reverse the flow, we can prevent the storm from spreading. Vorik stepped up to the console, his hands trembling as he worked to input commands. I know this system. I can help. The Thraxi commander worked in tandem with Dr. Core, his hands moving swiftly across the controls. The room hummed with the effort, the air crackling with energy as they tried to stabilize the system. Alina stood watch, her heart pounding. They were on the edge of success, but there was no guarantee they would make it. I think we've got it, Dr. Core exclaimed. The flow is reversing. The storm's energy is being siphoned off. The core began to hum louder, its glow brightening as the energy started to redistribute. For a moment, it seemed like the planet itself was holding its breath. Then, with a sudden shock, the entire room shook as the energy flow snapped into place. The storm outside seemed to hesitate, as if confused by the sudden shift. "We've done it," Alina said, her voice filled with cautious relief. "The storm is beginning to calm down." But just as she spoke, the ground beneath them trembled again, this time more violently. The energy from the core flared, sending a wave of power crashing toward them. Alina and her team struggled to keep their balance as the room shook violently. The storm outside was not done yet, and something inside the core had triggered an unexpected response. "Get to the exit," Alina shouted. "Now." The team raced toward the door, the chamber shaking violently with every step. Alina could feel the heat of the energy surging through the walls, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire core would collapse. They couldn't stay any longer. The storm, though lessened, was still fighting to break free. As they made it out of the core, Alina looked back one last time. They had stopped the storm. The team stumbled out of the core just as the ground beneath them trembled once more. The storm, though less intense, had not been fully subdued. Alina could hear the eerie hum of the planet's unstable energy systems echoing around them. They had managed to stop the worst of the storm, but the battle was far from over. The core had stabilized, but the damage to the Thraxi planet was deep, and now they needed a lasting solution. "Alina, we can't stay here," Dr. Core called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The core's energy is still unstable. If we don't act fast, it could trigger another surge." "Agreed," Alina said, scanning their surroundings. "We need to get back to the surface, where we can regroup and find a permanent solution." Vorak, his face a mix of determination and guilt, nodded. "We've relied on our power for too long. We didn't realize how fragile our world had become." As they made their way through the facility, Alina couldn't help but think about the Thraxi's history. A proud and powerful species, they had built an empire on the strength of their energy systems, but it was all built on a foundation of secrecy and arrogance. Now that very power was threatening to tear their world apart. It wasn't just a storm. It was the result of their own unchecked ambition. "We need to fix this," Alina said firmly. "We've bought the Thraxi time, but they have to take responsibility for their future." Dr. Core glanced over at her. "And they need help. The storm may be calming, but it's far from gone. The core's energy is still linked to the planet's atmosphere. Without a full-scale repair, the storm could return." Vorak turned to face Alina, his gaze intense. "You humans have done more for my people than I could have ever imagined. But you're right. We can't keep depending on others to fix our mistakes. We have to find a way to stabilize our world ourselves." Alina met his gaze. The Thraxi had a long way to go, but if they were willing to face the truth, there was hope. They had seen what could happen when civilizations put aside their pride and worked together. And now, the Thraxi had the chance to do the same. "Let's get to the surface," Alina said. "We need to figure out how to help the Thraxi rebuild. Their survival depends on it." Back on the surface, the team regrouped with the rest of their forces. The Hope, the human ship that had been hovering nearby to support the mission, was now a vital part of their next move. The crew had been monitoring the situation, waiting for an opportunity to assist. As Alina and her team arrived, Lucas, the Hope's chief engineer, greeted them with a mix of relief and concern. "You made it," Lucas said, glancing at the storm clouds above. "But the storm's still holding on. The core may be stabilized, but we need to address the damage to the atmosphere before it regains full strength." Alina nodded. "I know, but there's more to this than just stopping the storm. The Thraxi need to rebuild their energy systems, or the storm will return, and everything we've done will be for nothing." Vorak stepped forward, looking determined. "We can rebuild. We've lost so much, but we have knowledge. We have resources. If we work together, we can repair the damage." Dr. Core began reviewing the data on her tablet, her eyes moving quickly over the information. The Thraxi have advanced tech, but their systems are too interconnected. They've spread their energy networks too thin. We'll need to centralize their grid, focus the power into one safe zone where it can be controlled and maintained. Lucas joined in. We can help with that. We've got the technology to support their grid, but it's going to require complete cooperation. The Thraxi will need to trust us. Trust that this is the only way. Vorac's shoulders stiffened, his pride clearly at play. But he didn't hesitate. We've already trusted you with our survival. If you can fix this, we'll follow your lead. Alina felt a flicker of hope. The Thraxi were starting to see the bigger picture, but there was still one more hurdle. Time. The planet was on the brink, and every second mattered. We don't have much time, Alina said. We need to coordinate with the Thraxi engineers and get this repair underway. If we can't stabilize the atmosphere, all of this will be for nothing. The team worked tirelessly, organizing the Thraxi engineers to begin the necessary repairs to their grid. Alina and Dr. Kor helped where they could, offering advice and guidance. Vorak worked alongside his people, explaining what had gone wrong and how they could rebuild. Though it was a difficult task, the progress was undeniable. The Thraxi, once proud and stubborn, were beginning to open up, learning from their mistakes and looking to the future. As the repairs continued, Alina took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. Humanity had done more than just stop the storm. They had helped the Thraxi face their darkest truths and begin the journey of rebuilding. It was a lesson that would resonate far beyond this planet. A lesson about pride, humility, and the strength of working together. Finally, after hours of work, Dr. Kor turned to Alina with a look of satisfaction. We've done it. The grid is stable, and the atmosphere is beginning to recover. Vorak, standing at the edge of the platform, looked up at the sky. The storm was finally dissipating, the clouds parting to reveal patches of clear sky. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. We've survived, Vorak said quietly. And we have you to thank. Alina gave him a small smile. We didn't do it alone. This was a team effort. As the sun began to set over the Thraxi homeworld, Alina knew that this was only the beginning. The storm had been stopped, but the real work, helping the Thraxi rebuild and create a better future, was just beginning. Humanity had shown that even in the face of disaster, cooperation and trust could turn the tide. For the first time in a long while, Alina felt a deep sense of hope. Together, they could face whatever challenges came next. The sky above the Thraxi world had shifted. What was once a violent storm, churning with unpredictable energy, was now clear, with the soft light of a rising sun casting a golden glow across the land. The storm had subsided, but its true impact would take time to heal. As the Thraxi began their slow but steady recovery, Alina stood at the edge of the city, watching the horizon with a sense of quiet pride. The Thraxi had survived, but more importantly, they had learned a powerful lesson, one that would shape their future. We did it, Dr. Kor said, stepping up beside Alina. She was wiping sweat from her brow, exhaustion evident in her eyes, but there was a deep satisfaction in her voice. Alina nodded. It's hard to believe it's over. I never thought we'd be able to stop that storm. But we didn't just stop it. We gave them a chance to rebuild. Dr. Kor looked at the distant city, where Thraxi engineers were still working alongside human technicians. The cooperation between the two species was something they had never thought possible before, but now it was the key to the Thraxi's future. They've got a long road ahead of them, Dr. Kor said. The damage is done. The planet's systems will take years to fully recover, and they'll need help every step of the way. But they're willing to change. They've seen the consequences of their past decisions. That's what matters, Alina replied. They're learning, and they're not alone anymore. As the sun rose higher, Alina's mind turned to the broader picture. This wasn't just about saving one planet or one civilization. It was about something much greater, the potential for cooperation across the galaxy. The Thraxi were no longer a race to be feared or avoided. They were allies. Their strength, when tempered with humility and shared knowledge, could make them a force for good in the galaxy. "We did more than save a world today," Alina said softly, more to herself than to Dr. Kor. "We showed that even the most proud and stubborn can change if they're willing to face the truth." Dr. Kor glanced over at Alina. "It's not just about saving them. It's about saving all of us. If we can learn to work together, there's no telling what we can accomplish." Alina smiled, feeling the weight of those words. The galaxy was vast, and there were many civilizations out there. Some struggling, some thriving, but all carrying their own burdens. The Thraxi had been one example, but they wouldn't be the last. There would always be challenges, always be struggles. But as long as humanity and other species were willing to extend a hand, there was hope. "We'll need to stay here longer than we planned," Alina said. "The Thraxi are still learning how to manage their new systems. They're going to need time, guidance, and resources." "I'm not going anywhere," Dr. Kor said with a grin. "We've come this far. Let's see it through." Alina laughed. "I think we're in this together for the long haul." Just then, Vorik approached, his heavy footsteps steady and resolute. The Thraxi commander had changed since the beginning of this mission. No longer a proud, distant leader, he was now a man who understood the weight of his people's actions and the importance of their future. His eyes were filled with a quiet gratitude as he joined Alina and Dr. Kor on the platform overlooking the city. "Thank you," Vorik said, his voice carrying the heavy sincerity of someone who had finally understood the full cost of their past mistakes. "Without your help, my people would be lost. We will never forget what you've done for us." Alina nodded, her gaze meeting his. "Your people are strong, Vorik. You just needed to see the truth. And now, you're not alone in this. We're all in this together." Vorik looked toward the horizon, his expression one of hope. "We have much to rebuild, but with your help, I believe we can create a new future. One where our technology is used for good, not destruction." The three of them stood there in silence for a moment, watching the rising sun cast its warm light over the world. The storm was gone, and in its place was a world beginning to heal. There was still work to be done, but the most important task was already in motion. The Thraxi had chosen to change, to take responsibility for their actions, and to build a future where cooperation and trust were the foundation of their society. As the days passed, Alina and her team continued to assist the Thraxi, helping them rebuild their energy systems, re-establish their networks, and learn from their past mistakes. The relationship between humanity and the Thraxi blossomed, and soon other species began to take notice. The lessons learned on this world were being shared across the galaxy, and slowly the idea of peaceful cooperation was taking root. One evening, as Alina stood on the balcony of the new Thraxi Command Center, she watched a small group of Thraxi children playing in the park below. Their laughter echoed in the air, a sound that had been absent from the planet for too long. It was a sound of hope, a sound that promised a brighter future for everyone. Alina smiled softly to herself. This was what they had fought for. Not just survival, but a future where all species could thrive together, where trust and cooperation would replace fear and isolation. She turned to Dr. Kor, who was standing beside her. "We did it," Alina said, her voice filled with a quiet satisfaction. Dr. Kor smiled back. "We did. And now we wait for the rest of the galaxy to catch up." As the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Alina knew that their work wasn't finished. The universe was full of challenges, and humanity would face many more. But she was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was also full of possibility. And together, humanity and the Thraxi, along with all those willing to work for a better tomorrow, would face it side by side. The dawn of a new age had begun.